Upper Echelon is brought to you by Deloitte. For innovative thinking and thorough strategic planning, turn to Deloitte. Brian Molefe, the Chief Executive of Transnet, is our Upper Echelon guest this week. And, well, Brian, you've been in the job at Transnet for almost half a year. Is it what you expected?
Yes, half a year already. It's gone. Time's flying.
Were you anticipating that you'd be meeting so many challenges? For instance, just recently, the idea that they need to split Transnet up. Was it always going to be difficult?
Yeah, I think that when I took up the Transnet job, I had a feeling that it's going to be quite difficult. But it's quite complex. Let me put it that way. I mean, having responsibility for 55,000 people is not small. And there's always something exciting happening somewhere in the business that requires urgent attention. But I didn't expect the debate on the rail to turn up the way that they did.
So quickly as well.
Yes.
Brian, before you took the job, did you actually talk with any of your predecessors there to see what life would be like at Transnet?
We did have a discussion with Chris Wells. Maria Ramos is a good friend. We spoke about this. And yeah, they both said it's going to be a roller coaster ride.
But they both said go for it.
Yes, yes.
Because you were picked out of 63 people who were in the running for the position. So it's quite a feather in your cap that you got through in the end.
Yes.
What is interesting, though, is a couple of guys who've joined you or been there just before you arrived had left Transnet before. So it looks like a really politicized environment.
Yeah, but not in the last 6 months. It was before. In the last 2 years, it has been highly politicized. But I didn't feel I am not feeling the politics at the moment. I think that we're just getting down to the job. That is what I said to the executives team when we started. All of them that look, our job here is to move freight. So that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to move volumes, and that's what the country expects us to do, and that's what we're going to do. And I think the morale is picked up somewhat in the last 6 months, and it is a slightly different organization from where it was last year. Yes.
Sometimes just steadying the ship can play a big part.
Yes, yeah, and that is the other thing that happened. That within 2 weeks that I was appointed, we confirmed people in either their positions or in different positions, and that sort of steadied the ship. And I then gave an instruction that all the management levels below, we must get people confirmed where they're acting, or tell them that they're not getting the job, one of the two, but we need certainty. And that was achieved within a month. And from there, we set 100-day objectives. And every 100 days, every 3 months at Transnet, we now have performance appraisals. So we don't wait for the year to end. And at the end of the year, we'll have data on which we will sort of moderate the performance for the year. And performance for the first 3 months has been excellent. And certainly the end of September is the end of the first 6 months of the year. And when we do make announce the results for half the year, you should see a significant improvement, because people have been focusing on what needs to be done and knowing that in 3 months' time they will have a performance appraisal.
Interesting stuff, and it is, I suppose, a new broom sweeping clean there, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But Brian, from your own background, you were a political activist. I remember having a similar conversation with Pravin Gordhan, who's now Minister of Finance, who was also a political activist, and he says it's a great advantage to him because he gets things done. That's just the way that he was made. That's in his DNA. Do you think it's the same for you?
Yes, I think that helps to have an understanding of the way the ruling party works, of the way that things work, and sometimes to think politically is important, but not always. What is more important now is to focus on getting the work done and actually to try and take the politics out of the job. So the politicking by either employees and so on to try and remove it. But it's easier to remove if you understand it, and if you understand where it comes from, which tendencies, and what informs it. Yeah.
It's also interesting, though, that you've gone through the maybe the finishing school for public servants in the Treasury. We've had so many people who've gone through the Treasury, have gone on to big
Yes.
things in South Africa. Did they teach you there to stay with the public service rather than move off into business? Because that's been another feature of, apart from Maria Ramos, but most of the Treasury graduates have actually stayed in state-owned enterprises.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because many years ago, actually, when I was a member of the provincial executive in Limpopo, and then the Northern Transvaal of the ANC, um, I think Nelson Mandela said, "You can't all go to Parliament. The younger ones must go to school." And so, in 1993, in September, Lesicha Kganyago, myself, Bongi Kunene, and Julia De Brain were sent to SOAS. But it was just a small group of, actually, lots of small groups that were being sent overseas for studies. And we went to study economics and came back in June 1994 after the elections. In fact, we voted in London. And we stayed in the same flat. Came back. I joined the DBSA, and then I trained first as a foreign exchange dealer at FNB, and then joined the DBSA, and then joined the Limpopo government in the office of the Premier. And after some time, Trevor Manuel called and said, "There's a young man there that I've trained. I want him to come back." So I was a chief director then, and he said, "No, but the chief director is too senior. You're still young. I'll appoint you in the Treasury as a director." So I said, "Fine." So we got appointed there. But the interesting thing is that all of us stayed in the civil service. We were stayed in the same flat, had been sent by the ANC for training, for studies in London, and we stayed in the civil service. Lesija, as you know, became the Director General eventually, and is now Deputy Governor in the Reserve Bank. Julia De Brain is still in the Treasury. She's a senior official. I think she's doing macroeconomic policy or tax policy. Bongi Kunene went to represent South Africa at the World Bank as an official, and then came back to work for a while in the presidency. And we stayed, all of us, in the civil service for quite a long time. I think that that was quite astounding, actually. It was quite amazing.
It is. Well, I suppose if Madiba tells you to do something, you don't really disobey him, do you?
No, you don't. No, you don't, yeah.
What's next, though, Brian? Because you've had a career now with the Public Investment Commissioners, which has been a very big job as well. Transnet's an even bigger job. You are still young. You only turned 45 this year. Are you
I'm still going to turn 45 this year.
Yeah, only in November. So you'll be 50, and you'll have 5 years behind your first contract behind you at Transnet. What then? Then do you look at the private sector? Do you then look at politics?
I don't know. We'll see then. I don't know. Maybe when I grow up, maybe I'll just become an ambassador for 4 years, go and relax in some island somewhere, and entertain South Africans coming to visit. Or go and lecture at a small seaside university about my experience in the public service, something like that. That is not as stressful. And
But that's a long way ahead.
That's a long way ahead.
You're going to have a stressful 5 years, and I suppose you've already had it. Incredible to only be there for a few months, and now the rumours are that, first of all, that the Transnet executive were going to get changed again, and then the second bunch of rumours were that it's going to be split up.
Yes. But that is normal, quite normal in the business. Everywhere that I've worked, there have been rumors, and you've had to respond, and there has been sort of there's the work that you need to do that stresses you, but there's also what people are playing with other people's perceptions of what needs to happen and what is happening, and you need to sort of continue the engagement on that front as well, the public perception engagement. Yeah.
Does it get to you?
No, not really. No,
And
less.
when you were at the PRC, you did quite a lot of shareholder activism, which again had people playing with the public perception, as you put it. Did that get to you, particularly the furore over the appointment of Trevor Monday as deputy chairman at Bara World?
Yeah, I don't think I did a good job, because I remember throwing my twice out of the court because Whitey Basson was paid 60 million. Now this year is paid 650 million. So, but it was, I think that I believed in what I said at the time, and I said it without fear. And I always looked forward to a good debate about what I thought is a correct position. And so, yes, the transformation at Balo World, transformation in general in South African companies, is issues that as the PIC we took very seriously, and I was quite happy to lead an organization that felt so strongly about those issues, and I think it still does under the new CEO.
Do you think you made any progress?
I think at least these issues are being debated. I think the corporate governance is being taken seriously. I don't think because of the PIC, because I think there was a momentum anyway with the King reports and just the greater focus on corporate governance globally. South Africa was bound to catch up. So, yeah, and I think that we are coming of age with respect to corporate governance. The new Companies Act also helps matters a lot, because it clarifies a lot of the grey areas that were hitherto just dealt with by common law, but now they've been codified properly and has made a lot of progress in that regard.
Brian, it's a tough question, but the perception that exists of the lack of trust between government and business, perhaps black and white, given our history in this country, we haven't been a democracy for very long. Do you think we're making progress in closing that gap, or indeed are you one of those who can help to bring things together?
The way that I look at things is I think of 20 and 30-year chunks. I think in the last 20 years, in the last 30 years, we've made a lot of progress. South Africa is gone down a route and is in a path that a trajectory that was established about 30 years ago. And if you think about 30 years ago, we have made a huge progress. And I think that every day there are battles, we march forward, but sometimes people march a little bit backwards, sometimes sideways, sometimes, but the general line of march is forward. And if you think about 30 years from now, this country will be a very different place. I look at the children that are growing up now, their attitude towards race, about race and so on. There is progress from the time when I grew up, although there are huge pockets of South Africa that are still the same as when I was growing up. But there are others where there has been complete change to the circumstances that confronted the South Africa in which I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. Certainly, the stresses of today are not the stresses of my youth, where it was engagement with a hostile government. Now there is a friendly government. Children are allowed to express their ideas, and now there is a sort of a movement that says that we need to do something about education. And when I was growing up, I didn't feel that that was a sort of a crisis or a priority for the government. Now there is a mood that says we need to do something about poverty, we need to do something about unemployment. Those were certainly not the issues in the 70s and the 80s. And I think that going forward, if we can continue with this energy of wanting to do something about unemployment, about education, about poverty, we should see some benefits in the next 15 to 20 years. And so yes, I'm quite positive about the direction in which, the general direction that South African society is taken.
Brian Molefe is the Chief Executive of Transnet. Upper Echelon was brought to you by Deloitte. For innovative thinking and thorough strategic planning. Turn to Deloitte.